This name came to me about a year and a half ago, the narcissism mechanism. And when it came to me, I didn't really know what that was. It was trying to make itself known to me. And I still feel like I don't, but I know a lot more. This is not something that's consciously coming to me. It's like it's being kind of revealed to me about something deeper, about this whole world of narcissism, narcissistic abuse, etc. So I've been a spiritual seeker for over half my life, very consciously. But it was only 6 years ago when, so the beginning of an end of a 10-year relationship and a lot of pain and heartache and just a really hard, really difficult time. I ended up stumbling into, through YouTube, when a woman named Melanie Tanya Evans, who I think does an amazing job in this realm around healing from narcissistic abuse, is that I stumbled into her videos and she helped me to understand the dynamic that I had been in this relationship in a way that I wasn't seeing. So when I think about narcissism and narcissistic abuse or narcissistic relationships, I'm going to, so generally in relationship, whether it's a primary relationship, parent-child relationship with a boss, those have all played out for me, but also with my spiritual teacher. In those dynamics, there's a power dynamic that's going on that is unseen and unacknowledged by the people involved. So I came upon this in my own healing, and it was her that kind of introduced me to this world of energetic healing that I now teach. It's evolved as my guides have worked with me in my own practice. But this idea of energetically healing, I got also from Melanie Tanya Evans. But the idea with these dynamics between narcissist and typically on the other side of that dynamic is referred to as either codependent or empath. So you have a narcissist, a person with a lot of narcissistic traits on one side, a person that is referred to as codependent. In the spiritual world, they'll talk about it, narcissist and empath. Generally, this side of the dynamic, which I chose with the sort of cross shape, is often referred to as the victim in these kind of relationships. The idea here is that you have someone who is narcissistic, someone who's very much in their own world, unable to see others in life. So we think about narcissists, people that are very bombastic, fill the room with their presence. It's all about them, but it's not just that kind of behavior. The behavior can look like all kinds of different things, but the idea with the narcissist is somehow they make a situation all about them. And they suck a lot of energy. They really do not have the ability to see another, except for the ways in which the other serves making them important. On the other side, the codependent empath side. So empath, I don't like using it in this way personally. It's used, if you look on YouTube, people will talk about it, particularly in the spiritual world, narcissist empath. But people who are codependents tend to be highly empathic. The idea with the codependent is that they feel like it's their role to take care of the other person. And so for the narcissist that basically is insisting that people take care of them, and the codependent who wants to take care of other people, and the codependent often sees the woundedness in the narcissist and feels like they want to take care of them. This dynamic gets really enmeshed. What I've written here is it's a relationship where there's mutual need, and I would say mutual benefit. I've tended to be, at least as far as I'm aware of, on the codependent side of this equation personally. Most of you likely have as well. So what I'm suggesting here is the narcissist needs the codependent to be relevant, to be important, and to have existence, sense of, because that's the thing for the narcissist, that they need the attention so that they can be seen, they can feel like they're important, they exist, it matters. For the codependent, they need the narcissist also to be relevant and important because the built-in function that was trained in childhood, but also previous lives, is the need to take care of the other. The codependent derives their sense of meaning and purpose by taking care of another. And so I would say that in this, each in their own conditioned existence needs the other. So the narcissist lacks empathy. They cannot see another. They cannot see the other. And yet the codependent so desperately wants to be seen and acknowledged. That's why there's so much here. The codependent feels the need to fix the narcissist so that the codependent can get what they want. So you see that there's sort of a vicious circle that tends to be brought up in here. And what I would say is it's a circle of victimization. So I'm going to say more about why I'm saying this, because I'm looking at this from the perspective that we are each spiritual beings who have a piece of us, a very small piece of us, embodied here in this body, having an experience in this life, trying to free ourselves from the limitations which we've been carrying through eons of time. That's what I'm looking at when I'm talking about these kind of matters. That there's a setup here, setup that I think keeps everybody bound. It's what I'm trying to give voice, and hopefully with time I'll get more clear what it is that's trying to make itself known to me about this narcissism mechanism, because I feel like it's a certain way of being here together on the planet that is keeping the experience of being a human being very limited. And so in this kind of a way, what I see here is in this dynamic, that it's like a continuous cycle of feeding victimization. Because the narcissist is constantly victimized by the people around them. And the codependent is constantly victimized by not being able to make the change on the other end and being on the shit end of the stick about the behavior from the other. And each is looking to the other to fill in the missing pieces inside. So for two spiritual beings who are embodied here on this planet in these bodies, it's this continual cycle of victimization until you begin to see what the hell's going on and begin to remove yourself from the whole cycle. I'm going to give my best sense of what it is that I'm trying to bring in here. And so please feel free to ask questions, because I'm trying to talk about this in a way that's more objective and impersonal back and from the perspective of the God incarnate, what we are, versus looking at the dynamic between two human beings that don't realize that they're pieces of God trying to sort out shit. So I'm going to back up a second. So what it is that I see here is that codependents and narcissists, generally speaking, I'm using that term narcissist very loosely and codependent also somewhat loosely. But there's a difference here, and I think that between the two, the most notable is the ability to see the other. Empathy, the ability to see the other. People who have gone far enough down the track into narcissism have lost the ability to see the other, or at least the will or desire to see the other. And say, okay, what does it look like on a bigger perspective to see what's going on here in terms of spiritual being living as human here on the planet. So I'm really sort of distinguishing this from clinical narcissism because that seems to be actually not so many people. And most of us in our lives are not dealing with people that are necessarily clinically narcissistic. We might be. But there are a lot of people that are not able to see another human being and not able to recognize the other human being's experience as valid, as having anything to do with them. The narcissist is, this has nothing to do with me. It's your fault. So the codependent, generally speaking, tends to take responsibility for all the problems in the dynamic. Now, what I would say is even that can sometimes seem to be two ends of a spectrum. What I'm proposing is it's not at all. They're in the bigger picture, which I'm going to talk about here, they're actually quite close together because they're both people who are operating in quite significant ways out of deep woundedness. And it's the relationship to their own woundedness, I would say, that separates the two. Somebody who's gone into this realm that I'm speaking about in terms of narcissism, they've made a choice on some level to no longer be responsible for their own woundedness. It's not me, it's you. It's not me, it's you. It's not me, it's you. This kind of thing. Whereas the person in the codependent realm, in some level, recognizes their own woundedness is playing out in the dynamic. The issue there tends to be they're also taking responsibility for the bad behavior of the other. But in this bigger picture, we got this whole right side of the spectrum. So moving up towards more freedom. So at the top here, I tried to look at the spectrum from the sort of the negative end of this thing. On the left-hand side is more so. The right-hand side is less so. Wounded, protected, victimized, and self-abandoned. Now on the flip side, down below, as you go to the right, the person is more unconditioned. They've done the work to remove the conditioning, the things that keep them inside a bubble of old stories and old wounds. More and more self-partnered, more vulnerable, and more trusting. So this whole right side is the part that I'm really deeply interested in talking about because there's so much possible. And I think this is part of it when I talk with people about getting out of situations or making changes. We don't realize that there's a whole experience of life which is available to us. And it starts with self-partnering, being there for ourselves, realizing we need to give ourselves the parenting that wasn't given to us. We need to be the parents for ourselves. Now we need to be responsible for ourselves. Nobody else is fundamentally responsible for us in terms of taking care of our own woundedness, our own needs primarily. And then I'd say taking a step further into actually self-love, deeply loving, appreciating, valuing ourselves. And then I thought, well, what's even farther than that? And I'm calling it today transparency, where the sense of a self becomes thinner. Because so much of what we think is us, so much of how we identify ourselves, I'm going to say, is based on our woundedness. So what happens when we're no longer carrying the effects of all that woundedness around with us is there is this experience of being more and more transparent. I don't know, more fluid. This is really interesting how it split that. Trans beyond the parents. Because in this lifetime, a lot of these dynamics within us get mirrored in how we experienced our parenting, the parenting we got. Now, what I would claim is that that's, in essence, the playing out of the movie of everything we brought into this life. But it's the ability to get really beyond the effects of the parenting. But it's much more than that. Okay. In order to get us out of this dynamic, and what I mean by this is that, well, actually, let me make one more point. That for most of us here, we're likely in that area that I'm referring to as codependent. Now, a point I want to make is that on some level, codependents can be, in essence, will be future narcissists. Why is that? Because if we don't take responsibility for our own woundedness and life keeps heaping it on us, and at some point, and this can happen in a way that's not conscious. It's like, fuck this. I just can't feel this anymore. I can't deal with this anymore. And we cut ourselves off from our own woundedness. That, in essence, is the step, I would say, that's stepping into that realm of narcissism. Because narcissists can't be empathetic. They can't feel the other because they've chosen to not feel themselves anymore. They've not chosen to not feel their inner pain. And I've learned this couple hard lessons this last year with people that I know that had really, really shitty childhoods. And, they asked for my help and we were working together, and then it became really clear they weren't interested at all in feeling their own pain. And then it played itself out, just the inability for them to be able to see other people. There's something in all this dynamic when you can kind of see, hold on a second, this is just a circle of victimization. Meaning I'm not responsible. I'm not wholly response-able. I'm not wholly, completely able to respond to this situation in my life. It doesn't mean situations outside of us aren't imposing all kinds of stuff and it's shit. I'm not saying that at all. But the idea that somehow because of something out there, I am not able to fully respond. This is a high bar. I realize that. But I feel like it's the bar that we're being called to by life right now. Because as spiritual beings here on the planet at this time, we have the potential to literally escape tremendous limitation. Tremendous limitation that humanity has been living under for a very long time. And if we don't pull our heads out of this mechanism, it's going to be really difficult to take advantage of that. So I hope this has made some sense. It's been kind of chewing away at me for a while. I need to talk about this. And so this will keep emerging. So let me share with you what to do about this. So what to do about this, in essence, is the stuff that I talk about all the time. But if you can see this kind of dynamic, how it has played out in your life, how it is playing out in your life, it can help to make, I hope, more urgent, important, why to take up the kind of stuff that I'm talking about and others as well. So how to escape this? Practice a non-victimized relationship to life. And I've put what I consider at this point in the unfolding of my teaching into what I'm calling the 7 frames of the practical mystic. And I put a link in this post down below the video where you can download that. Also, if you go to my YouTube channel, I gave a workshop on these 7 frames. I called them something different, but that explains them more fully. but to practice that, practice living from those frames. Frame meaning a perspective. It means a way to look at it, and then do your deconditioning or healing work. These are the 7 frames, but go and download them, because I think the download has more descriptions under each of them. So this, in essence, the 7 frames, the perspective, the points of view to take. And you can practice this with something specific so that you can start to get used to how to practice it. The idea is you practice this so that you're encountering life more and more from this perspective. So the first one is, all of life is here to support me now. Boy, that is a setup for not being victimized. I am not in any way claiming these to be true with a capital T about existence or life. I'm just saying these are immensely helpful as places to be when looking at your life. 2, there is no problem. There is nothing wrong. So it can mean, I fucking hate this. I wish it wasn't happening. This sucks. Yes, yes, yes. And there's nothing about this that should be different. It means we're not fighting it. We allow ourselves to actually just be with what's happening. You could call this sort of a radical acceptance of what is happening. Not that it's okay to be treated like shit. I'm just saying, if you just let it be, you're actually much better able to see, hold it, this is shit. 3, only a fraction of what I'm currently experiencing emotionally has to do with what's happening right now. The idea here is, particularly in more difficult situations, because when it becomes really clear, is that most of what I'm feeling, or maybe a lot or most of what I'm feeling right now, has nothing to do with right now. It's triggered stuff from the past. Then you want to kind of show up to clear that energy, which all of you should know how to do by now, hopefully, so that you can deal with what's here versus all of the stuff from the past, which has suddenly shown up. 4, embrace a position of I don't know in relationship to the situation. Why do you do that? Because we are so effing conditioned. Nothing personal. Don't take it personally. There's nothing personal about it. In a human body, we are working within immense conditioning, which means we just see things a certain way. All this stuff comes up. It's like the blanks all get filled in of how we see things before we have a chance to even see what the hell's there. That is the nature of human life. But we're also a spiritual being in there. So we can choose to say, hold on a second. Pull back the conditioning. Hold on a second. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I don't already know what's going on here, and I want to find out. This is in the teaching of my 3 keys teaching. Frame 5. Assume that whatever it is that's happening here is actually the doorway to the solution. So instead of trying to make it go away or pushing it or trying to do whatever, it's like, so come here. Let's look at it. Let's embrace it. It's the same kind of relationship that I ask you to have in the trauma healing audio with the difficulty that's coming up, is embrace it. Be curious about it. Be interested. Assume that the challenge or symptom is actually the doorway. It's the way to the solution. Frame 6, we exist as a collection of parts. Why is this important? Because with stuff going on in our lives, often we will have at least 2, if not more, conflicting attitudes, perspectives, beliefs about it. And in order for us to be able to really see what's going on, we want to invite all those voices to the table. Now, this leads back to our group reading at the beginning of this. So instead of trying to figure out which of these voices within us is the right one, because then in this moment it's this one, and then this moment it's this one, and this moment it's this one. No wonder we feel like this. We exist as a collection of parts. there seems to be one part, one us, who can stand separate and apart from them and see them and be with them, heal them, so they can all begin to play together. But in our experience, there's many of us. And frame that 7 is the idea of next right steps. The way to do this in terms of what do I do about this in my life is to be looking for what is my next right step. This is also in my 3 Keys teaching.